Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Introducing Next-Gen Web RUM Built on OpenTelemetry. I am Colin Contrary. I'm the head of content at Embrace. I will be one of the presenters today. And before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be made available to you later today if you'd like to watch it again or share with your team. Second, please ask your questions using the Q&A feature. So we will have dedicated time at the end for questions, and we'd love to answer as many of them as we can. And with all of that said, let's meet our other presenter, John. Why, hello, John. Can you tell the people who you are?
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Munns. I'm a senior software engineer here at Embrace. Yeah, I've been working on our Web RUM product here and pretty excited to talk to everyone about it today.
Nice. So let's share what we are going to be talking about today. So first, we'll start with what current approaches to real user monitoring are, and what some of the challenges are with using these tools to measure and improve user experiences. We'll then move into what rethinking observability with a user-focused approach looks like, and why it offers several benefits over existing RUM solutions. And then we'll show a brief demo of the Embrace Web RUM dashboard and its integrations so that you can see how it connects technical performance to real user impact across web and backend so that your engineering teams can deliver fast, reliable, and exceptional digital experiences. So that's what we'll be covering today, and let's get into it. So let's start with the current state of RUM. So if we think about the goal of real user monitoring at its core, it's about understanding how people use your applications in production, right? This is vastly different from synthetic monitoring or running automated tests during CI/CD, right? After all, your users have very different internet connectivities. They're using different browsers on different devices. They're using your web app differently. They have different expectations on latency and performance. Really, there's just different everything when users are involved. And there just aren't enough tests in the world that can cover every failure type across the incredible complexity of modern web apps. So, real user monitoring is about surfacing friction as measured by user behavior, then identifying its impact and knowing where the source of the problem is. So, you want to be measuring your software's reliability from the perspective of your end users. So, well, then what's wrong with current approaches to RUM? And we can break down these shortcomings in three broad categories. So, first, they're built primarily by backend experts, right? They're an add on feature to a backend focused observability product, and the needs of your front end team to understand user experiences are completely different from those of your reliability team operating your complex backend infrastructure and applications. Second, these RUM products bubble up issues, but they're not necessarily tied directly to user impact. So one of your backend services has an increase in latency. Does that translate to users? Do they even notice? It turns out it's really difficult to make informed decisions based purely on performance data. Because what ultimately matters is what users tell you what matters by how they respond when technical things happen while they're using your web app. And so the third big thing is vendor lock-in. So frequently, if you're using a real user monitoring tool, it's because it's what your observability vendor offers, right? You want end-to-end visibility? Well, then you better use the tool that can do that we happen to provide. Now, at least that's historically been the issue from the era of proprietary data models and agents, but that is slowly changing with the growing adoption of open standards, which we will get into in this presentation. So I want to dive into each of these three things a bit more. So first of all, if your real user monitoring is built by an existing backend observability vendor, it's going to live in the realm of individual signals and aggregates, right? It's going to collect logs, traces, metrics. It's going to convert logs and traces into metrics, all that, because that's what works when observing backend systems, right? You track latency of services and APIs. You look at error rates. If something spikes, you dig into the logs. You can run queries. You can look at call stacks to see what specific thing went wrong in your system. If you map that approach to user-facing software, what you're going to get is, okay, you're going to get counts of sessions, how long it takes a website to load, a list of errors, core web vital scores. You're going to get these measurements of performance on individual pieces of your web apps and the infrastructure that supports it. But what you're not getting is that clear picture of what matters to the user, right? Your investigation needs to end up at a specific person using your software and making a decision whether to continue using it or to abandon it. So anything less than that from a technical performance measurement is you're not really understanding that user behavior at the level that makes it truly actionable. And so the second category, issues not tied to user impact. This ties into the next shortcoming that I'll talk about now, which is existing RUM solutions struggle to tie issues directly to user impact. So on this screen, if any of you have loaded the browser DevTools sidebar functionality, you know that web browsers and web apps are tremendously resilient to errors. And websites can throw a lot of errors, right? Resources can fail to load because users are using ad blockers. Scripts can fail to download. Network requests can fail, but then they'll retry, but they might fail again and retry, and they might never complete. And a lot of the times, users will be completely fine with it. They could navigate your website, they could look at products, they could add them to cart, they could purchase. And so, if what you're making decisions on in terms of which issues you investigate is just which error appears the most in your error table, that's not looking at it from a user impact perspective, which is understanding, first of all, do you even need to look at it? So, take as an example Core Web Vitals. These are important metrics that Google will use to punish web apps in search rankings if website performance is bad on different measurements. So if one of these metrics spikes or multiple of them spike, other than appeasing Google by hitting a threshold, how do you actually know the user impact? Right? You might have a large layout shift when your website loads ads in the middle of a page. Are users leaving as soon as that happens because they get frustrated and accidentally, click the ad instead of getting to the next piece of content? How are you measuring this? Are you able to measure this? So without tying the signals of things that might be going wrong on your web app to user outcomes, again, you're just making decisions based on performance data alone. And so the third piece is vendor lock-in. So if you're using an existing real user monitoring solution, that's part of a larger observability platform, you're tied to what they give you in terms of data and insights, right? If you rely on collecting individual signals like errors, traces, load times, and they don't provide much analysis other than the frequency that those occur, that's not going to help your front end teams solve issues. And if your path to understanding what happened to a user involves checking signals across different products or running these complex queries or combing through logs, then your RUM solution isn't really much more than a data collection mechanism, right? While you might have end-to-end visibility, you can look at your web app data within your centralized observability platform. You can identify possible technical issues, but you're going to stop well short of the insights needed to prioritize and solve them without that full user experience context. So you're going to be tied to the workflows and visualizations that they build for you. You're tied to their roadmap and whether they prioritize their web support, their RUM product. And you're going to be tied to their pricing structure, which may significantly limit the data you can capture without those eye-wateringly large bills. And so the future of RUM is not forcing vendor lock-in with proprietary SDKs, agents, and ingest mechanisms. It's not excluding competition because no one else gets a seat at the table. Front-end teams should be able to select tooling that's built for them and that provides insights for measuring and improving user experiences. And with the growing adoption of OpenTelemetry as the open standard of observability, collecting, sending, processing, and integrating signals across tools is now very much possible. So that puts the power back into individual teams to choose the tooling that works for them without sacrificing end-to-end visibility or those great shared workflows between reliability teams and front-end teams. And so, what is the better approach? Well, I've hinted at it. Instead of using tooling built by back-end experts, web developers and front-end teams should be able to use tools that are built for their specific needs, right? Instead of struggling to prioritize issues because you can't tie performance to user impact, teams should always be able to connect their observability directly back to user experiences. And finally, it's time to do away with making it difficult for teams to freely choose their own tools. And so, with that, let's cover what it means to focus on users when it comes to observability. So, I'll talk about Embrace, a little about what we're building. So, Embrace actually connects technical performance to real user impact, right? We do this across mobile, web, and backend so that engineering teams can deliver fast, reliable, and exceptional digital experiences. While we're going to focus on our web RUM product next and in the demo we show, we also have a mobile RUM product. So you can use Embrace to understand performance and reliability across every screen, device, and platform. Every way users interact with your product, Embrace can help. And so let's go into a few of the ways that Embrace helps. So first of all, we're built for front-end teams. Front-end teams get all the context they need to truly understand where technical performance impacts user engagement. That starts with not just collecting and displaying raw signals, but capturing the complete details of every user interaction and presenting them in full session timelines. So you can analyze technical events and user behavior together without querying, fancy log search, or any other tremendously manual process. We also stitch sessions together so that you can track user experiences across multiple sessions. So that way you're not guessing at impact, right? You can see when users leave temporarily, when they load your site in another tab for a minute, and whether they leave temporarily for a bit versus when they leave for good. And instead of just trying to solve grouped lists of errors and exceptions, you have better ways to prioritize and solve them beyond just stack traces. And while the Embrace platform provides a lot of value out of the box, you can also measure the KPIs that are most important to your business. Everything from events to key user flows to specific performance signals you care about. You can create any custom metrics, create dashboards and visualizations for them, and create alerts for them. Next, John.
So great, thanks, Colin. Yeah, just to dig into a little bit more, Colin was talking about with that context. We really want to make sure any of the signals we're collecting at Embrace uh, get to the context of where is that happening and who is that happening to. So whether it's slow network requests, traces through your operations in your app that are slow, unhandled exceptions, those all link directly back to a real user and the entire session they experience leading up to that signal. So, as an example for core of vitals, like you do want to know that overall score. Is it poor? Is my SEO being dinged because I'm below a threshold? But in order to actually fix it and take action on it, you want to know how did a user get to the situation where they got that poor report. What element on the page was most attributed to that poor score? What's all that context that you need to figure out what's going on and improve it going forward? And that's kind of a core experience for Embrace across all these signals. Always being able to link aggregates back to exemplars so you can get that sense of what happened and how to make it better.
Yep. And another of the key benefits of collecting these user-focused data sets is that our platform can actually bridge that gap from finding out what happened to understanding why it happened and whether it's important to your business. So, for example, while your product analytics tool can show funnel drop off, it can't connect to the underlying technical data to explain why the drop off is happening. And with Embrace, you can create user journeys and track which ones complete and which ones fail due to possible technical reasons as opposed to user choice. So that way you understand whether it's a design decision that we should look into, maybe we need to change how the product looks versus are we not delivering a good enough performance for users to continue using our web app. Even better, you can also see these technical events in context, and you can investigate the specific flows for any individual user. So again, getting back to that full user session context. So we'll share more about this during the demo, since this is something new we've been working on. And we've only just scratched the surface of how it's going to help teams better understand performance throughout key parts of their web apps.
Nice. Um, and so going back to what Colin was talking about with avoiding vendor lock-in, a lot of that power at Embrace comes from our decision to build on and with OpenTelemetry. Um, so for those not familiar, OpenTelemetry is a standard on how to model observability data, and it's also language implementation. So we have a web SDK, and that web SDK leverages the JavaScript OpenTelemetry packages where it makes sense, so that we can collect things in a standard way. So in OpenTelemetry, that standard way, at the raw data level, comes down to having well-defined concepts of observability data. So specifically, logs, traces, metrics, like what are these signals and how should they be modeled? So that means we're collecting things that Embrace that we think are important for getting visibility into your application. But at the same time, we're doing it in a standard way so that, if you choose to send that data elsewhere to another observability tool, you can. And that data is still going to be useful and still going to be understood by those other tools, provided they understand OpenTelemetry. So, um, that raw data, you can send that to other spots, and that's going to be useful, but it is low level. And when you send that data to Embrace, we process it, we enrich it, we do aggregations on it. And we also don't want that process data to be locked into Embrace. So we let you set up custom metrics on top of the data we processed and forward that elsewhere. And that is also something that's done using open standards. So metrics, for example, are sent as Prometheus data. Um, and that really lets you set up these flows where you can have the client side data that we're collecting alongside server side data or other observability data in places that your SREs are already looking at, kind of living side by side and creating these dashboards and these abilities to monitor um, sort of the end-to-end picture of all the telemetry you're collecting. And we also make sure, going back to that concept of always wanting to get back to the context that's relevant from a user point of view, that any data we send outside of our system is tagged with enough information so that we can generate backlinks to our product. So in Grafana, for example, if you're looking at data that you forwarded, you can always click back from that and get to those exemplars that are back in Embrace.
Nice. Well, that was a lot of information. And John and I have covered a lot of the key benefits of Embrace. And next, like I said earlier, we'd like to show it in action with a brief demo. So take it away, John.
Awesome. Yeah, so to start with, this is a bit of an example application. It's actually a fork of the OpenTelemetry demo repo, which has a few different examples showing how telemetry can be collected from different kinds of applications. So this is, simulating a basic web store. In this case, there's various bits of astronomy equipment that you can look at, add to your cart, and complete checkout flows. So that's something we've instrumented with the Embrace SDK to kind of show what data collected from an application uh, would look like in Embrace. So, for a flow we just experienced, that would involve potentially a few different user interactions, maybe having the tab open for a bit, switching away from it, coming back to it, adding some items to cart, and we would collect that all together in Embrace and sort of stitch that together to give you this chronological user timeline, showing all the various signals that were collected and the various actions that were taken by that user, and giving that context that if something did go wrong, what kind of led up to that and what some of the details around that user session. Um, Here, for example, we can see that something did seem to go wrong during the operation of making a purchase from this particular user. And we can kind of see that laid out along with um, some Web Vital reports or some error logs or some unhandled exceptions to try to get some more idea of what actually happened in this user session. And for all of these various pieces of telemetry, we can always dig in further. So if we are concerned with some of the network requests or other signals, we want to click in and see more details, kind of outlining, okay, for that operation of making a purchase, it looks like that involved adding some items, trying to place an order, and something went wrong in that operation. And then going from that very specific example, we want to also have the ability to kind of pull back and see, you know, for an aggregate of that action, what is happening for a larger percentage of my user base? Is this one situation where one user encountered something wrong, or is it happening to a sizable percentage of my user base? In this case, we can see it does seem like while some users were successful in making a purchase, this does seem to be happening somewhat frequently. So that's where we can kind of dig into a few of these examples and then get back to that user context to try and figure out what's happening. We have a similar idea if we're looking at Web Vitals. So, at a aggregate level, things look pretty good. We have met the threshold across our core Web Vitals for these different measures. So things overall seem reasonable. But we can kind of, as we look into more specifics, see that we do have instances where our CLS, for example, is poor. So that might be a situation where we'd want to dig in and understand, okay, for those situations where it's not great, is it a particular path in the application that's causing problems? In this case, it seems like there might be an individual product that has an image that might be too large or is loading in a way that is causing some larger layout shifts for our users. So that's where we can start kind of digging into that and getting back to a user session and seeing like, okay, for this user that hit that poor Web Vital score, it seems like they left immediately. They weren't able to complete what they started doing in this case. So we can look at a few different examples and decide, what is happening with this poor score and how much of an impact is it having on my desired flows for this user to go through. Um, Cool. And stepping back again to aggregates, out of the box, Embrace is going to offer dashboards that are zooming in on particular types of these signals. So showing web vitals, showing unhandled exceptions. But you may want to monitor various types of these signals in a very specific way and mix and match them and see them together in a unified view. And that's where having the ability in Embrace to create custom dashboards comes in. So I can understand there's an issue going on in my application, and I can construct this dashboard to combine various signals. So I want to keep an eye on, the ability of my users to add items to the cart. Alongside maybe one of my Web Vital scores, alongside something else, and kind of see that in a single dashboard in a way that's very specific to my use case, um, which is great. Uh, but like we talked about, uh, this might just be one piece of the puzzle. This might be information that is useful to see alongside something that's coming from my backend telemetry and the health of my APIs. So that's where going from a dashboard like this in Embrace, we can look at creating custom metrics that reflect the data we were displaying there in that dashboard and sending that to some other tool. So in this case, um, grabbing some log or other information that's related to an issue with adding products to the cart and deciding to forward that to Grafana Cloud. And then from there, being able to look at that same data we're looking at Embrace, uh, but have it side by side with something that's coming from some other telemetry we're collecting and also surfacing in Grafana Cloud. So having not only front end developers, but potentially other members of the team and SREs getting that sort of full picture in the tool that they're using for monitoring that health. And like we talked about, you know, having that monitoring, but still being able to zoom back into Embrace to then think about, okay, based on that monitoring, can I look at a particular example? Can I get back to a particular instance of this happening and a particular user timeline where one of these issues was occurring, and then use that to kind of dig deeper into that issue. Um, cool. And yeah, that kind of painting the full picture of going from aggregates to exemplars and back to aggregates and back to exemplars again.
Nice. Thank you, John. I will take back screen share. Thank you so much for that awesome demo. And uh, oh, we have another. So John just showed you what any customer today can get with the Embrace dashboard, WebRUM dashboard, and our integrations. But we'd now like to show you something that we have been working on. It is currently in beta, and it is a way for you to understand those user journeys and to understand if you create user flows, where are technical issues happening within them that are affecting completion rates. And so you can dive in and really understand context, not just at a session level, but across these flows. And so with that, John, I'll let you show this awesome functionality that we are excitedly building right now.
Great, thanks, Owen. Yeah, this is sort of building on a lot of those flows we've talked about and adding automation around it. So, being able to see a user flow that's important in your application, whether it's a payment flow or something like that, and seeing kind of an aggregate view on top of that. How often are users able to um, get through this operation that I care about in my application? How often are they abandoning it or encountering some sort of an error? And being able to um, dig into those a little bit and seeing reporting across all the times these flows were encountered in my application by users. What were they experiencing? In what cases were they completed successfully? How does that look across different releases of my application? Um, and specifically, if they are encountering issues, what is the nature of those issues that they're encountering? This example that I'm going through was built for a mobile application, so the particular signals are not totally relevant for web. We're talking about crashes and application hangs here, but the idea is the same. That there's some amount of things that are going wrong when users are going through this flow. What are the ones I should care about, and where should I be digging in to see how I can bring up the success rate of this particular user flow. And like everything we've kind of talked about today, being able to dig into a specific user timeline for someone who had gone through that flow either successfully or not, to get more of that context of um, if things did go wrong, when and how. Um, and Yeah, and building these user flows, um, we want to make sure is leveraging the same telemetry we're already collecting. So actually specifying the definition for what you think is important in your application comes down to looking at the data we're already collecting at Embrace and specifying where something interesting in your application is starting and where it's ending. So in this particular example, seeing that maybe this flow is triggered by a user interaction or a network request or some sort of span or log starting, and ending when some other signal is detected. So all this can be built off of data that's already being collected by Embrace. And one more thing to mention is as we look at future iterations of this product, really making sure we try and surface as many interesting insights or correlations about these flows as we can to kind of simplify that troubleshooting process we talked about. So if we do detect that, in the 5% of time this flow errored, that was predominantly happening on users on a particular type of device or a particular type of browser, trying to surface those correlations and those insights at this top level as much as we can, so that when you do dig into those exemplars, you have that uh, those correlations in mind, and you're able to sort of target your search of how to make this better, armed with that information. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And let me take back the slides really quick. Okay, so that was the demo portion of our presentation. And so I would like to talk about a few things that we've covered today. So to summarize just a bit, we've shared why your observability needs to connect directly to users and their experience within your web apps, and why traditional approaches to RUM are not built for the needs of front end teams. So it's not enough to just measure technical indicators of poor performance. You need to connect them to how users respond so that you're making decisions based on actual impact. We also covered, with the growing adoption of OpenTelemetry, the observability world has never been more open, right? You are no longer forced to select all of your observability tooling from a single vendor. You can choose tools that give you deep insights in the domains that you need them and your teams need them without sacrificing that end-to-end visibility. And finally, as our web and mobile apps and backend systems get increasingly complex, it is important to connect those data sets, right? Create better collaboration between your backend teams and front end teams, your reliability teams and your front end teams. That way you can better incorporate front end data and insights into your existing, well-established observability workflows.